say that you are preparing yourself for a presentation in front of very big audience, let's say. So the moment you start thinking, okay, what they will say, am I going to, is my voice going to crack? Will I look good? Am I going to hesitate? Am I going to shake? The moment you start thinking, your brain starts producing that feeling, and it goes to your brain. You'll find that your hands start shaking, you get sweat, you get blushed, so your body starts reacting to the way you are feeling. So these are generic information to start with to understand emotional intelligence. A lot of people might come across that emotional intelligence is being aware of what you feel and what others feel around you and how you handle that information. And today I want to be specific because some of the questions says that how I can bring that balance level, how I deal with my son, so I will talk in generic way without being specific because some questions, they have similar thread of the message. So I will be, okay, so I will be on the same line. I'm just reading if there is anything new, okay. Right, so there are certain competencies that we can all of us here, and you can teach them to your kids as well, where you are intentionally, one thing about emotional intelligence is the intentionality. You intentionally do things because you want certain results. And after some time with the practice, it becomes habitual. It becomes part of you. So the more you are practicing emotional intelligence, the more you become, it becomes automatic and it shows in your character at certain stage. Emotional intelligence is a competency. So I cannot read. Let me give you a metaphor. So if somebody gives you a book and say, this is a book, and read this book and learn how to drive. And when you open the book says, okay, so you have the steer here, you have the brake here, put your legs here, put the key then, and then adjust the mirror, put on your seat belt. So you press the petrol, you go with this speed, and then you press the brake. It will not work. You know the concept, you know the basics, but you need to practice. So this is why you need somebody sitting next to you, showing you how to do it. And with practicing, so first day you are super conscious about it. You are super conscious that, am I putting my belt? Did I adjust the mirror? Is the key on? The AC is on? You'll be checking each and everything. But I'm sure that some of you might have now driving license and have been driving for so many years, you don't even think about it anymore now. You switch on your car, you are half the way around maybe, and maybe you are already near your destination, you are adjusting the mirror. Or you might have forgot to put your seatbelt, or you might have forgot to put certain things in the certain way. But when you are a new driver, you are super conscious about it. You are intentionally putting certain time to think about it and act and make everything ready, and then you work. Emotional intelligence is just similar to driving a car. So what we are doing here is, or what I am doing here is raising your awareness level. It's what your instructor does the first few days or 1 or 2 days to tell you what is this car about, and start little bit and practice little bit. But then the more you practice, the more you will become successful to get the license. I mean, then you are functioning well, and then the more it becomes automatic in you. And this is how emotional intelligence people start utilizing this at certain stage without putting a lot of thought in it. So it happens within seconds. But maybe at the beginning, for those people who are not familiar with practicing emotional intelligence, it might take them some time to intentionally think about it. So the first and the basic competencies in emotional intelligence is the awareness about the emotion. Am I feeling something right now? Are others around me feeling something right now? So name it to tame it. Unless you are able to name that emotion, you are unable to manage it. And by the way, I will be using the word manage. I won't be using the word control. This is another misconception about emotional intelligence. There are times, no matter what, no matter how highly intelligent you are, you cannot control emotions. This is something from God, and sometimes we cannot control. You know this is happening to your body, and you just let it be. Whether you want, whether you don't want. So there are times where you cannot control, and you have to accept it. So this is why we avoid, actually, in the science of emotional intelligence, it's a neuropsychological science. So in that science, sometimes we avoid using the word control because it's not possible, and we prefer using the word manage, how you manage your emotion. So managing emotion starts by naming it. In our part of the world, and I would say our part, which means Asian part of the world. It's either it's Oman, it's India, it's Sri Lanka, it's Indonesia, Malaysia, all this part of the world. This is one of the competencies we get stuck with it because we are not a vocal culture about our emotion. So we don't talk about it. Unfortunately, the worst thing is we don't talk about it to our kids, and they are raised up in that way where they don't talk about emotion, and talking about emotion always come across like something which is not desirable, something with other people might view it negatively, or people judge you on it, or anything. It goes into that negative domain of the thoughts. It doesn't go to the positive one. And sometimes people frame you because you are emotionally vocal. So it's a culture where we prefer I think rather than I feel. So even if you are conversing with anybody from your culture, just notice how many times they use. I mean, like, you can do this exercise today till night, and don't tell anybody that you are trying to observe this, and see how many times they are using the word I think, and how many times they are using I feel. And you will see the drastic gap between the utilization of the word I think is so huge rather than I feel. So this is something that if I hadn't known, I wouldn't have put an effort. Though maybe, in my case, I have kids who are very old as if they are university graduate now, and I have very young, who's 2 years old. So now I felt that when I become aware of that, even with the elder one, it is not too late having that conversation where they talk about what they are feeling, so having the ground where, and even when they are young, even if they don't understand, or they have some physical challenges or disability, and even if they are so kids like 2 years, you know um, uh, I'm putting a lot of effort for them to use I feel, why you are feeling like that, and then they start unpacking why they feel what they feel. So it starts with recognizing that you have certain emotions, and once you start recognizing it, then you start bringing the thinking into it. So now I recognize it. What is the usual pattern? So when I feel like this, I do like that. Okay, is it bringing me to a decision that I really desire? Yes, then I continue that pattern. We call that the competency recognizing pattern. So I continue that pattern. No, then I need to break that pattern. So I tell my child, study, or I will beat you. He doesn't study. Study, or I'll beat you. He will not study. Study, or I'll do something to you. And then he still, I will do something to him bad, still he will not study, and he will have the consequences of that physical act. So I have to think about, oh, that pattern is not working. Obviously, it's not getting where it is a benefit to me or benefit to my child. How can I break that pattern? Okay, let me do something different. So that is the breaking of the pattern. I break a pattern to a pattern that is excellent. And believe me, even if you have twins, identical twins, you cannot use the same pattern with them. And this is by research. In emotional intelligence, we do a lot of profiles. So one of the profiles that we do is brain profile, how your brain function and how your brain have certain patterns. I remember in one session, I have identical twins. And when they came to the session, they had, and the session was about communication using emotional intelligence. So we did a brain profile. It was so surprising. They are identical, looking the same, they walk the same, they even dress the same way. And apparently when we did their profile, I found that somebody who is totally practical, the other partner is emotional. One is idealistic, the second is, like in the present. One is long-term, the second is in the short-term. One is day-to-day person, the second is a long-term person. And it was so surprisingly reading their profile with them. And at the end of the session, it was so surprising when they said, now we understand why we fight a lot. Now we understand that, yes, we are twins, we look the same, we act the same, we do a lot of things, but now I know that why we have a lot of disagreement, because this person is thinking this zone, I'm thinking that. So even if we have 2, 3 kids, we cannot use the same pattern with them. So for example, I have a son, if I tell him that, okay, if you are not studying, I'm taking the PlayStation for 3 days from you. It will not have the same impact if I use the same pattern with my daughter. If I tell her I take the PlayStation from you for 3 days, she will say, who cares? It doesn't matter. But if I tell her that I'm not going to say, I mean, girls love to be with their friends all the time. So no friend gathering the coming few days. You are not going to talk to your friends. I'm not going to drop you to their places. No parties, no birthday. Oh, you name it. So you use that pattern, and then they really stick to it. I'm talking about kids here because a lot of questions came up to the kids. Believe me or not, we use the same methods at work, with employee, with people around us, with our spouse, husband or wife, our mothers, our sisters. They are not the same. I mean, you yourself now just do a little bit thinking, and whether you are using the same pattern with one sister and another sister, is it the same? Understanding. And the pattern will not come overnight. It comes with experience. You have to have proper experience to understand what we call it in emotional intelligence, what lies beneath, what is under the water, not the surface. And this is why people say that when people get married at the beginning, they see the tip of the iceberg. But with the days, they start seeing the patterns under the water. And either they adjust to that pattern, or they break that pattern together to adapt a new pattern. But if there is so much clashes between the two patterns, then sometimes the relationship does not work. And this is the same scenario happens with our kids. This is the same scenario which happens with the with all the relations we have around, name it, at office, with our friends. This is why we have different friends. I'm sure for people who are my age, you will find that when you are younger, you have so many friends. This is why I tell your kids, you have to tell your kids, this is an age where you enjoy. You don't judge people. You have so many friends. And as you grow older, you filter people to reach a level in the 40s, 50s, where you have very, very few people around you, those who match your pattern. And this is why we say in our culture, in the Arabic culture, maybe this is one of the Islamic rule that marry young, because when you are marrying young, you are not looking at a pattern which is very close to you. You are attracted to the tip of the iceberg. You haven't thought what is under the water. And then you get married, and then you start discovering under the water. And so with the years, you start discovering the pattern, and it works, you adapt and you don't adapt, and you are doing it, but all of you are doing it unconsciously. Now you know why you are doing it. But there are people who are not married. And I have a friend, for example, who is not married, and she's now getting over the 40. And whenever we have this conversation, it is very difficult to convince her with any relation, because she is at this stage, she is looking somebody who looks totally the same, identical to what is under the water. So our kids, you are dealing with the kids, our kids are still at the tip of the iceberg. So how to make them aware of the right patterns at this stage is very important. So sometimes maybe if you ask them, you are angry, so you throw your toy and it broke. So you remember last time what happened? What was the pattern? So you don't use the word pattern, but tell them, okay, so you are angry and you want to throw this toy. Do you remember what happened last time when you throw the toy? Yes. Then the kids start explicitly explaining to you, when I throw the toy, this and this happened. So my toy broke, my mother was angry, and then for some time she didn't bring another toy, and I was a period without the toy. Okay, so do you want the same results? No, I don't want. Okay, so what do you do differently? Oh, I'm not going to throw my toy and I'm not going to break it. So the child will start going back. It's just like a cassette. You rewind it, and maybe you help your child at the beginning to rewind it. What happened? So previous pattern. And then there is another competency in the same zone you are teaching them. So what are the consequential thinking? Consequential thinking means if I do this, this will happen. Because last time I did this and this happened. Do I want the same result? Maybe yes. So I continue the pattern. Maybe no. Then I break the pattern. And usually breaking the pattern is because when you do consequential thinking, the forward zone in the cassette. So I usually put it as a cassette where you go rewind and forward. And you are in the present, but you rewind and say, oh, I did this. Last time when my partner was angry, he shouted at me. I shouted back, he shouted back. Then we end up not talking with each other for 2-3 weeks as adults. And say, do I want the same result? No. So maybe let me put another pattern, maybe consequential thinking. If this time he shouts, let me be more calm and let me bring my tone down, not totally ignoring, because that will lead to another zone. And what happens with the anger, for example, I'm using the example of the emotion anger. It's like going up to the mountain. If you don't have the equivalent, it comes down. So maybe he will come down his anger aspect, and then we start communicating. The more communication happens, the more resolution of the problem. Okay, so I'm just giving you an examples. It's not only this. Emotional intelligence is not about how you handle your anger. It's also how you handle your joy at times. I remember certain scenarios where you are filled of joy and excitement. And for example, it's a day of an appraisal for your staff. And you don't make that joy and that excitement affect your decision, even with people who are not performing very well. Because people are also smart like you. They make sure that they ask you at the right time. They come to you when you have a very good mood. So everyone does that. Everyone is utilizing your emotion, by the way, around you, even the kids. For people who have kids, just notice that The kid will never come and ask you when you are angry. The kid will ask you if you are watching your serial or favorite serial, or you're so much engaged in certain work on your computer, or as my child used to do, my son Muhammad, when he was young, I used to remember this pattern he used to do. He knew that I'm very difficult to give him permission to go out unless, especially at very odd timing. And so I would be sitting with him in the sitting room and he wouldn't ask me. And the moment I go and sleep, he will come in the room and say, Mommy, my friend so-and-so on the door, he wants me just to go to the shop and come back with him. And you know, when you are sleeping, you are not thinking. And then you tell him, okay, go. So the moment I finish my nap and I get up and where is Muhammad? And say, he went out, he took the permission from you. When, where? So, you know, like the kids are very, very clever in that. They usually try to take the permission when you are really in a very good zone. And they read your face, they read your voice, they read your gesture. They know when you are relaxed, they know when you are engaged mentally. So your mind is so busy with something else, and that is the time when they come to take permission. So these are kind of emotion where it is not an anger, it's an emotion of being engaged. You are engaged, you are just engaged, and somebody comes in between. And this is why maybe at work, I make sure that if I am so much engaged or working on a project, and for example, my secretary comes or any employee comes in between and want to discuss a very important thing, either I put pause to what I'm doing and I close the whole laptop and I change my position and go and sit with them on the sofa, another place. So I change the whole physical atmosphere to be with them in that discussion, or I don't do it, or I tell them to come later, because you cannot do the two things together. So this is consequential thinking. So this is the third competency that is very important. Another competency, people who are highly in emotionally intelligent usually look at what is good in everything. Optimism, practicing optimism, high level optimism. For example, now you have your kids. They are going with you through this experience of this pandemic. There is a high level of uncertainty. You just ask yourself, so there is high level of uncertainty, but what are the things that we are certain about? So there are things which are beyond our control, and there are things which we can control. So leave what you cannot control, but think about what you can control and focus on them. It all depends where our focus is. So when you are shifting their focus, because we as human beings, this is how we are brought up. Our brain tend to shift to the negative pattern immediately. It takes an effort to bring it to the positive pattern, because by default, it goes to the negative, always. Oh, there is this pandemic, so somebody will get affected in the family. Somebody might, you might lose a dear one. This might happen. What I'm going to do in this situation? So already you are thinking of scenarios which are all negative. But you are, and because you are going that zone, unconsciously you don't feel it. But that affects the way you are acting, the way your mood is, and how you are affecting the people who are around you, especially spouse, especially your kids, because they are not the right people whom you take this out on them. One of the things that I missed at the beginning to mention about emotional intelligence is a very nice quote from Aristotle, the philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle said long time back something which is very valuable. He said it is easy, and he used the metaphor of anger. So he said it is very easy to be angry, but to be angry with the right person at the right time, at the right level, for the right purpose, this is not easy. So then you are unconsciously spreading that emotion around you. So what happens to the house you are living in? You are there, because emotions are contagious, no matter what. Your emotions are always contagious. Maybe you are unconscious about it, and then everyone in the house gets affected by it, and everybody gets in that mode. When you change it, the whole thing change. I mean, I personally, it's not that I avoid talking about pandemic in my house, but I more often tell them that things will be okay. The more we are conscious, the more we are following the rules, nothing will happen. So if we are in our house, we don't go unless it's an emergency. If you are wearing this, I keep telling my child that, yes, this is real, this is happening. So they are aware of what's going on. But I always tell them that I feel that something good is happening. Very soon we'll get back to the normal. Prepare yourself going back to the life after a few months. You know, like, so they are, and you know, I try my level best that don't, unless it is the announcement of the higher committee, I don't watch the news. The more I watch the news and get all the negative things going again and again, the more frustrated I feel, the more fearful I feel, the more it gets into me, and I can't help it at times. If I am unconscious about it, it gets into me. If I am conscious about it, be sure that I brush it off. I, uh, I, I always tell myself, so what happens? This is happening, and this will happen later on. Let me stop it here. So practicing optimism is the fourth competency that needs to happen. One of the very important competencies is navigating emotion. So sometimes it's not you. Maybe you are a balanced person, but maybe it's happening to somebody around you. How can you navigate? How can we all have a navigation system which is similar to a plane, which is similar to the ship, where a navigation system can show you, you know, that beep that comes, red beep, 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 some danger is coming, and accordingly I'm diverting my way. So how can we have a navigation system saying that, well, I can read the body language of my child, I can see the reaction, because it's either act or feel or think. Either they are thinking in a certain zone, either they are acting in the certain zone, either they are feeling in certain zone. So it is act, feel, think. Something happening to these three domain or one of them. And you can read that as a cycle, something else is happening. And how can you interfere, and how can you solve that issue within your child before it accelerates and divert them to the right zone? Um, it is very important. Another one of the important competencies, and the sixth competency that is very, very important in emotional intelligence, how you increase the intrinsic motivation of yourself and people around you, even if they are kids. I'm not talking about the staff at work. If some of you are in leadership role, because you keep wearing that hat for all people around you. How you increase not only the extrinsic motivation, some things which are materialistic. So you reward them with something that is a gift, money. It is not always the reward that people want. Sometimes you see what fuel them. So maybe, for example, for your child, accomplishing something and you acknowledge it is far more important, and you acknowledge it in front of his family, of his father, of his other siblings. It's more important than you reward him with a game, for example. So also, what fuels people around us? Is it a talk? Is it a word? It doesn't mean that always the extrinsic motivation or something which is materialistic is bad. No, there are times where people feel excited. I have a daughter, unless you bring her present for birthday, happy birthday does not make a sense. And I have a son, for him, happy birthday means the word, and if I give him a kiss, and it doesn't matter to him that I bring a present or not. So what fuels them? What excites them? It might be a tap on the shoulder saying, well done, or it might be a hug, or it might be just living the excitement with them. Share share what your child is feeling with them. It's the same thing you share what your staff feeling with them. It's the same thing you share with what your spouse is feeling with them. Your friends. One of the most, and I feel that this is one of the most important competencies for emotional intelligence is we practice empathy. I think everyone here is very much aware of what empathy means. Unfortunately, we are living at a world right now where ego and I, me, and myself is much higher than what others feel. And unfortunately, also I'm saying unfortunately, we are living in a world, and the recent study showed that the emotional intelligence level is really declining with the new generation because they are living in more isolated zone with technology than a socializing zone. I'll give you a very simple example. When I was raising, when I was kid, I was raised in a house where we were 21 people living. 21 people. So how many pattern I had to do since I was child? 21. Because I have 21 people, so every person has had a pattern. How many consequential thinking I had to do? How many motivational thinking I had to do? How many practicing of optimism for different people I have to do? How many chances our kids have the same thing? I'm living in a house with three children. That's it, full stop. Or two children, or one child and my husband, and we are three. That's it. How many patterns they are experiencing? And when they are going to school, that's it. And then they come back home, they are on their computer or they are on their gadgets. So social skills are declining. And, uh, and with it, the human interactions declining, and unfortunately, emotional intelligence getting affected. And they found that when people get in that zone, it is always about me, I, me, and myself. They don't think about others unless you bring that thinking about others, how valuable it is to think about other people, to do good to other people, and why it is important. The eighth very important competence in emotional intelligence is thinking about noble goals. Why you are doing, simply, why you are doing what you are doing. So getting our kids in that zone to understand that why we are doing what we are doing is very important, because unless they understand why we are doing this, they won't be able. This is a generation where they ask the why question. And unless we answer them, and unless we have proper answer to their questions, which link to why you should think about other people before you think about yourself. So you teach them how they increase empathy. It is one of the very important skills. I think we as parents, we have to put an effort. When we were raised up, it become like a framework where we were raised up. So nobody said that do empathy, feel about other people. It was just a culture around us. We picked that culture. We started behaving the same way because everyone around us were just concerned about other people. As we are growing and with this generation gap, there is less thinking about others. And we need to increase that level to bring the balance in themselves. Otherwise, they will end being very selfish. And the moment you are selfish, you cannot practice emotional, because you cannot practice empathy, you cannot practice understanding other people's emotion. It doesn't matter to you what they are feeling. So imagine your kids growing up and he doesn't care what you are feeling. He doesn't care what act he's doing, what pattern he's doing, and what effect it has. He doesn't care about consequential thinking. Oh, I don't care what happens in the future. I do whatever happening now, and I don't care what reaction happens out of my action. Imagine the world like that. Imagine a world where somebody is not caring about navigating What are the other people around them? Imagine a world with somebody who is not practicing optimism. So he's always, or she is always in that negative zone and upset with life. So people get in that zone, and this is why people really do not think about these things. We find a lot of stress levels is getting very high. People who are working in the medical field among you, I'm sure they can relate with a lot of chronic diseases, blood pressure, diabetes, getting up because of the stress. Stress itself is an emotion. How you deal with it, how you deal with the people who are around you. A suicide level is getting very high, but if you go back, then the major issue are with certain emotion that people could not handle, and because they couldn't handle it and nobody helped them to handle it, the act that came out of them was not a sensible one. So these are some of the competencies that maybe you can start practicing it with yourself first, because it doesn't work with others if you don't start it with yourself. And it doesn't start with the office unless you start it with your young family first. I remember myself struggling with emotional intelligence at the beginning because it was floating in the air. I didn't know what this science is talking about, and emotion was not a zone that I was comfortable with. So I started practicing it with self first. Maybe for me, 12 years back, my major zone was handling anger and handling stress were the major zone. And how I went around thinking about them, putting an effort. As I said, emotional intelligence science is all about intentionality. You bring intentionally some thought to what you are doing, what you are feeling, name it, explicitly explain it. And then as you are doing it yourself, start practicing it also with the people around you, starting with the family, your kids, your husband, breaking certain patterns. I remember certain patterns which didn't work with my spouse long time back, and we used to have so many disagreements, and how we break that pattern and we become in a more balanced, mature way. And I think I am blessed because I feel that that balance helped me in my personal life, and alhamdulillah, blissfully, I'm living with the same partner for the past 22 years, so which means I haven't driven him nuts yet, and he's tolerating. That means that we are bringing some kind of balance maybe to our pattern. The same thing starts with your children and kids, and what kind of emotion. I remember my daughter is one of the people who alerts me about being emotional. Actually, I went to that course because of her. She was young at that time, but she said something which is very valuable. She said, can't you be like other mothers and just be a little bit emotional? And that hit me to the core, because she is an emotional person and I'm very practical person, so I didn't give attention to the emotional part. This is why we couldn't connect. But now it doesn't mean you become emotional. I mean, I can't lie and say that I become an emotional person. I remember a few years back when she was graduating from her high school, she invited me to, of course, and her father to the graduation. And one of the conditions she put and was very strange. And she said, "Can you please do me a favor today when you are coming to the graduation?" She said, "Can you please cry?" And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Mama, all the parents today will cry because of the joy." I said, "But I am feeling happy, so why should I cry? For me, cry does not resonate with the happiness." So I said, "Why should I cry?" She said, "Please, please, please, because if you are not cry, all my friends will think that your mother is not happy." And I found really that is a very big dilemma, because knowing me as a person, I knew that is very, very difficult. So what I did is I took actually my husband's card and I invited my mom. She cried. That solved the problem. So sometimes we have to resonate with the way they understand the emotion and what emotion mean. So for her, somebody there is crying, shedding tears, you know, it doesn't take a second for my mom to cry. So that solved the problem. She was happy, joy. For me, happiness mean I don't cry. I really feel excited. I give a hug. So it solved the problem. So what I'm saying that sometimes is maybe our bringing up. I mean, my bringing up being the tough kid, the first kid, responsible kids. I was always wearing that hat. But acknowledging emotion is very important. Maybe it doesn't come in the same level that other people who are emotional are practicing it, but at least you start thinking about it, you start thinking about what to do with it. I think I talk a lot. I would love to hear something about from your part and some interaction maybe. I think I will put there.
I think Akshay has unmuted everyone, and you can mute yourself now. And those of you who wish, you can ask your questions. First of all, before that, ma'am, I really thank you so much for talking about emotions. I think this is where we really break down in all types of our relationship. As you said, not just home, at workplace, everywhere we break down. So it was really nice, those components which you told, particularly for the children who are listening now, the future generation. I know how it's going to be useful to them. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, if you have any questions, or you want to ask something, you can ask. I hope it's okay, ma'am, if they ask a couple of questions.
Yes, Gayatri, it's okay. Just before I wrap up, I want to say a last thing, which you need to keep it in mind. Emotional intelligence is about making choices. Please remember that emotional intelligence is about thinking the right way. Can you please unmute yourself?
Can you all please mute yourself? Akshay, I would rather say you.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. You need to remember that emotional intelligence, one of the most important words in the emotional intelligence is choices. How you make the right choice after you are analyzing what you are thinking, how you want to act, and how you are feeling, and how you want to act. So it's about choices, and remember that you have the choice. Even if your body is telling you something about the emotion, you have the choice how you deal with it. So yeah, I can read some of the questions that is popping up in the chat. But if you want to unmute one person or two people can interact, please feel free, Gayatri.
I think the participants can now unmute themselves if they want to raise any questions on the forum.
Yeah.
Can I? Suganti
Yes,
from
please.
Chennai. Can I?
Yes, Suganti.
Suganti.
That was a wonderful session. Actually, we learned a lot. That's eye-opening, and we were throwing lights on various aspects of life. This session would be helpful not only for our children where we are working with. It's useful for us in our personal life also. Thank you so much. My question is, a rule book is different and the practical life is different. We teach our children to be like this. We give a rule book. We ask them to do this, follow these kind of rules. But when they go into practical, they face a lot of problems. And that's the time they actually get a big hit. So
Yes.
how to handle this, madam?
For you to be aware that it doesn't work with the book. This is why I gave an example of driving a car. You will not get your license, that is, you're successful in doing it, by reading that book and making your child read that book. You have you know, like the instructor who sits next to you and become your mentor, show you, advise you, at the same time, make sure that you are taking the right step. And remember, when you are driving the car or you are learning to drive, the instructor also step in to stop you or stop the car if he or she feels that you are about to make an accident. So as a mother, one of the things that we neglect is that zone of sitting next to them in the other driving seat and showing them how to do it first, and then taking them through the journey. So it starts by yourself. You know, make sure your question is very important. And for children, the easiest way to do it is to imitate. So when you are doing it, they start doing it. If you start the conversation by, I feel today so trapped in my thinking because of this and this and this, they start talking the same language. And I wish I can go 22 years back and I have done to my eldest one, Shahid, which unfortunately I haven't done at that age. And to do it after 20 years, it will look a little bit unlike you. What happened to you? I mean, they will start asking you question, what happened to you, mama? Why that change? But do not wait for people to judge you, do it. This is why I changed my strategy with my little one. I was blessed to have a young daughter 2 years back. She's 2 years last week or the week before, she completed 2 years. Believe me, I can see the immediate effect. She just, you know, imitate me in everything I do. So when I find a resistance, I'm talking about a 2 years kid. When I find a resistance from her, I always start by doing it myself. She start so the moment I take my phone, I start, you know, being busy on my WhatsApp, she demands the phone. The moment I start jumping with the cartoon that she's watching, she start doing the same thing. So, you know, the patterns that we start building for them start from us getting engaged. So the person who show you the driving lesson the first day, he will not give you the steering wheel. He will sit there and he will start driving. The first day, he will start driving and show you, this is the brake, this is the fuel. He will drive for some distance and then he will switch the seat. And then he will say, come on the other seat, but I will be watching you. Do like this, follow. And whenever there's danger, step in. So, you know, as you said rightly, I cannot give them the book and say, learn about emotion. You have to talk about, it will never work. It will never work. For example, I mean, you can start with simple games. I mean, I hope we have time so I could show you some practical examples of using it. One of the things, for example, if you are watching a kid's movie with them, so just have a conversation. What did you feel? Oh, that guy got betrayed. How did it feel? That person did not help his friend. How do you think that friend is feeling now? How do you think if you are in that friend's place, how would you feel? Let them live the experience and explicitly tell you. There are so many activities actually you can do with the kids where you make them explicitly talk about the emotion and how they will handle it. And if they are going in the wrong pattern, as a parent, you can step in. How would it feel if it happens to you? So you are increasing their empathy. At the same time, you are showing them, change your thinking now. I hope that answers your questions.
Yeah,
Take them through the journey. Take them through the journey yourself first.
Thank you so much, madam.
Thank you.
There are some couple of questions in the chat box, ma'am. How patterns are broken in EI, consciously or unconsciously?
How patterns are broken in EI, consciously or unconsciously? Patterns cannot be broken unconsciously. This is why I kept saying from the beginning that emotional intelligence is about intentionality. So you are intentionally making a thinking, saying that because emotional intelligence is bringing thinking and feelings to make right decision. So if those decisions are not working and not bringing you to a right zone where you are satisfied, that means that pattern is not working. You need to break it. So you put a conscious effort saying, okay, last time, as I gave you an example, last time I informed my staff in front of other people that this is not working, and that because of that, the person got upset and he didn't do the task, because he was more into that you embarrass that person in front of other than doing the task. So this pattern is not working. I have to adjust another pattern. So next time if something happens, I take the staff in isolation, tell him about what is not working, and ask them the solution and engage them in that discussion, so they are acknowledging it and adapting the solution. The same thing we do with our kids. So unless you are consciously thinking, bringing thinking to it, you cannot break it. So it's always conscious thinking.
One more question from Dr. Benny, sir. What are the best practices to cultivate EQ in our kids?
Asking them the why question. Start with the why. Always ask why you are doing what you are doing. So what do you want to accomplish with this? They will tell you, okay, I want this and this. So then start asking them, so how will you do it? And what you had. The problem is in our culture, we start with the what. And then we go to the how we do it. And then maybe some of us will ask why or not. It should be the other way around, because the why is the fundamental method, the fundamental point where the whole wheel can start moving. So ask your child the more of why, and believe me, I'll tell you something, this generation loves the why. And then they go to the how, and then they go to the what. So if you are asking me, because the why, you know what is why in the emotional intelligence circle? In the why, you have two competencies, and that is increasing empathy and your noble goal. The moment they can get hooked to those two, they start then the how they do it. They start thinking of the consequence of their action. They start thinking about optimism. They start thinking about navigating other people's emotion as well as of theirs. They start thinking about what will motivate other people. What would, not only what will motivate other people, what motivates self. Sometimes also our self needs motivation. And unless we gear ourselves with motivation, sometimes for me, if I am finishing I know that some people are there from CBFS, and maybe they hear this in my retirement farewell party when somebody asks me, but I will say it again. Whenever I accomplish something, I reward myself by watching an Indian movie, because I really love Indian movie. So I take it as a reward. It is just something that you never thought about it, but I feel that if I spend just 2 hours something with the popcorn and enjoying a movie, it's a reward. So I'm not looking at the physical reward as much as an intrinsic reward. So how you can discover that in your child and make them also question themselves what they really like, not the toys, not the money, what really they like, and they hooked with them. And then you go to the what in the what scenario is your emotional literacy. Do you know what you are feeling? Do you know what others feeling about you? So naming the emotions, so they become real, they become human, they become in front of you, and unless you bring them to life, you can't deal with them. So if you just take a pause and ask yourself, why things are not working these days?
Dr. Yasmin, repeat the lecture, maybe in Arabic. How can?
Ma'am.
Hi, yes, definitely. I I would love to, and have done some sessions during Ramadan in Arabic. Just 2 days, the night of the Eid or the day before it, we had a session on leadership using emotional intelligence from Bahrain as one of the sessions, and it was totally in Arabic. So there are times it's according to the audience, and I guess the audience here couldn't understand Arabic, so I felt that it's more suitable to use English. But definitely, yeah, definitely, inshallah, if there is a platform where only Arabic people can understand it, I would love to do that, Baraka, inshallah.
I
Shukran.
think Sabha ma'am is also here from early intervention head, right? I saw Sabha ma'am's name. So maybe for that we can have a separate session in Arabic also, where people can learn it, because it's such an important and a valid topic. Sure, Barka
Yes, I
ma'am.
think that's a good idea.
Sure, it will. I will be very happy to help and support with that.
That's wonderful, Dr. Yasmin. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear. Thank you so much.
So thank you, ma'am. I think ma'am has answered all the questions. Barka ma'am and Sabha ma'am, I invited you formally just before the session. I think, I couldn't talk when you were there. Welcome, and we are very happy that you were with us in this session, because I know Sabha ma'am and Barka ma'am have been helping me a lot in this, bringing this vocational center in Oman. So I need to introduce them.
I want to say something since Barka ma'am and Sabah are there. A lot of countries in the world, and I know that the center that I'm working with, which is 6 seconds, actually, let me pause here and say something before I continue. 6 seconds is the organization that I work with for the past 11, 12 years. And being a country leader for them for emotional intelligence, is working towards that science in education. And I was blessed that a few years back when I visited them in San Francisco, there is this school, Synopsis, where they have built it on the science of emotional intelligence. So actually there is a lot of infusion of the emotional intelligence in our syllabus, in our education nowadays, in many parts of the world. I think we need to bring that culture, how we can inject certain elements of emotional intelligence in our schooling. Because our schooling currently is all about memorization, it's all about practical IQ knowledge, only IQ knowledge, but not EQ knowledge, not about emotional intelligence. We talk about the knowledge, we talk about the information. We never in our schools give any activities or shape any exercise where the kids unfold and talk about their emotions, or
Freezing.
even a scenario where all the kids
Hours, I think, yeah.
start talking about emotion and how they will react to those scenarios, because from the way they will answer their reaction, you can understand where they are going and how you can divert that like that thinking. So I think through people like yourself, who are so much close to the educational system, this is very, very important and fundamental aspect. I will take also the note, sorry Gayatri, because Benny sent a question here saying that how can I he sent a question about the anger, and I was just reading it when the other question came.
I'll just find out.
The question, anyway, the shortest way to answer that question is the 6 seconds is called 6 seconds for a reason. Actually, scientifically, they found that our brain needs at least the least time that it needs to bring the thinking before the feeling is 6 seconds. So we are all born with our let's say we have two brains. I know we have one brain, but you know, two parts of the brain. So we are born, let's say, with one emotional brain and one thinking brain. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, God has created us in the way that the emotional brain is supreme. It has the control. It rushes before the thinking. So if you give your brain that pause, and that pause is called, that pause takes you only 6 seconds, where you can bring the emotional brain down, and then the thinking brain start hijacking the emotional brain. Because usually, as a normal case, the emotional brain hijack the thinking brain. So you need to give your brain at least, this is why when people who have anger, your question was on anger, people who have anger, or they have, you know, that's violent kind of things, when they go, for example, to psychiatrists or to people who can treat them, they always ask them to count to 10, count backward, take a deep breath. I will give you an example from our Islamic rule, and I'm sure because I have shared this before, it is the same thing in Hindu, it's the same thing in Christian. There are certain verses in other, you know, like other religion as well. We have a verse in our Quran says, or Prophet Muhammad said it, sorry. He said, when you are angry, change your position. 14th century ago, he said, if you are angry, change your position. So if you are sitting, lie down. If you are, or you go and wash, or you go and pray. So science found out that this is very helpful because you are giving your brain the time by changing position, by doing something different. You are diverting your emotional brain so your thinking brain can take control, and then you can take the right decision choices. Now the science evolved and psychological science evolved. They are saying the same thing. Just give your brain. Do not react immediately. Even sometimes if people here are from working in the offices, sometimes we say people, if you're angry and you wrote an email, keep it in your draft. Second day, read it. If you are still want to send it the same tone, the same voice, then send it. Otherwise, keep it in the draft form. Come after 24 hours and read it, or come after 1 hour and read it. Because most of the time, what happens after 24 hours, you will cut half of it, and you send it in the more sensible way. Still you are showing your concern and your feelings, but you send it in a different way. I'll give you another tip from the leadership. You know, any change happens in any organization, you notice it. Try to notice it from now onward. They bring it on, for example, in Oman, because we have Friday and Saturday weekend, right? Any new regulation, any new change in the hierarchy or new circulation, it comes on Thursday, 1 o'clock. Because they want to cut something called resistance. By the time you come on Sunday, it's already sank in. There is no time for gossip. There is no time for this. There is no time for resistance, and everybody is back to their work. If they bring it on Sunday morning, that whole week of the business got ruined. So, you know, we are utilizing actually emotional intelligence in so many of the leadership act we are doing, but people do not know that this is emotional intelligence. But now we are bringing it to awareness level. So just answering a question, Binay question, which was very good about emotion, about anger, how I can do it. Start practicing the pose. Any other questions which I didn't answer? I hope I answered.
Yes, ma'am. Any book is
Again,
there in EQ? Have you any? There is someone asking if there is any book in EQ. Can you suggest?
Not a particular book, but there are so many books by Joshua Friedman, which is the CEO of 6 Seconds, which I would recommend because they are very practical. So a lot of you can actually just type 6 seconds and then it takes you to the website. In the website, you will find the books and the tools. So the books will tell you actually what kind of books they have. So these are the books that I will recommend. It also will show you some of the tools, some of the questionnaire that you can use in schools, kids, because sometimes it's also very important to know that whether the brain style of a teacher match the brain style of the students. Maybe the teacher is teaching in another brain style, which adapting his or her brain style, and the brain style of the kids in the school are totally different. That's very important in education. I just remembered that, so I'm just saying, because I use a lot of these tools as an assessor, brain profile, 360, leadership profiles, and we know that there are so many benefits for these tools. So you find those tools there. You find some example of them. It's a very rich website. Maybe you can visit it. 6 seconds US.
How can we decrease the anger of the teachers in the classroom?
Decrease the anger. They have to practice consequential thinking and the pause, Benny. Because as I said, you know, what are the consequences of my anger? Am I getting the results I want? So it starts actually with the teacher asking those questions to himself before he start to decrease the anger of the kids in the school. That person should see whether he or she is practicing that anger and what he can do. So all the 8 competencies I talked about it. Empathy, put yourself in the student's place and look it from their perspective. Pause, consequential thinking, what will happen if I do it this way? What are the results? If I do it in another way, how it will happen? So you are breaking the patterns for one. So, you know, like how you increase their motivation, how you increase their optimism. So all this comes together. The teacher has to practice it first to break that pattern in the classroom. It doesn't start with the students, start with the teacher.
So I think we've done, right? Yes, Siddhika ma'am here. I don't know if I saw some name, but I'm not sure. Anyway, because she was in the educational field, I thought it would be better. Okay, anyway, I will brief her. So thank you, ma'am. On behalf of all present here, the professionals, the mothers, the children, thanks a lot to you for spending your valuable time, because this is something which is very, very important, extremely important to have a healthy atmosphere both at home, at workplace, outside our community, everywhere. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Gayatri for the session, and I just want to say that this is one of my noble goal, is how you make positive change in people's life through education is one of the things that I believe in so deeply. So actually I was just practicing my noble goal, so it's my pleasure to share the knowledge, and if it's really help and support anyone, I'll be more than happy. Thank you so much for inviting me for the session.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So thank you all. You can leave now. The next session, I will keep you all informed so we can wind up. I'll be the last one to go. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gayatri. Gayatri, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Very
Bye.
lovely session. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.